I would tell him, check your ego at the door. It's diaper changing time. Let's go. It's poopy time.
It's poopy time.
It's poopy time. We got to change these diapers, because I wanted some help.
You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of the You've Got Mail scene when Meg Ryan is sick and Tom Hanks brings her soup. And she's like, me. And then the more sweet Tom Hanks is to Meg Ryan, the softer she gets. And he's like, do you have tissue? And brings it's just it's one of my favorite scenes ever.
Exactly.
I love that
And at
movie.
the end, he puts his fingers over her lips and he goes, I'm going to stop you. Before you say something, you're going to regret.
I know.
And it's so true. We just need somebody to stop us.
Yes.
Before we say something that we're going to regret. And I pray, I do. I pray about this. God, help me.
Be kind.
Be kind. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Wire Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about marriage. I want to share 2 key principles that have really helped Greg and I over the last 37, almost 38 years of marriage. And they're simple and they're practical, and I think they're going to be a big benefit to you. So let's dive in.
Hello, moms, and welcome to Wire Talk. I'm your host, Emily Karosik, and sitting here next to me is my wonderful, awesome mom, Karen Stubbs.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, Mom.
Hello.
Founder of Birds on a Wire Moms. I mean, how old is the ministry at this point?
Woo, we are, what year are we in? 13 years old.
It's amazing. And
crazy.
Married to my dad, Greg Stubbs. And how long have y'all been married for?
37, almost 38 years.
4 kids, Kelsey, me, Taylor, Abby, 6 grandkids.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy.
It is. Why are we going through my biography?
I don't know. It's just, I was supposed to ask you how long you've been married.
It might be helpful if I would read my notes.
I was supposed to ask how long you've been married. So before we go into married, I was just going to talk about your amazingness.
Yes, we got married August 2nd, 1986. Some of y'all weren't even born then. You definitely were not born then.
I definitely wasn't
which is
born.
a good thing. And it'll be 38 years this year. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
It's like I'm talking about my parents' marriage, not mine.
I know. Well, it's a long time. 38 years is a long time.
It really is.
But today you're going to be giving us some really awesome marriage advice. And I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. I love hearing you and Dad speak. And a couple months ago you spoke at a church.
I did.
And
with Dad.
I know. And I didn't get to go to that one. And I was super bummed because I think because I'm in the younger years, 10 years, which is awesome, but still young.
Yeah.
I think you should always be a student of your children. You should always be a student of your spouse and student of healthy marriages. And you and Dad are a healthy marriage that, Brian and I strive to be at 38 years one year.
Well, we try. We try. Marriage is hard.
It is hard.
And it's hard because we're so different. And your dad and I are complete opposites on everything. I mean, this is the way we start the whole talk is I start naming all the differences. Like, I'm an extrovert, he's an introvert. And when I say introvert, I mean introvert. Greg is analytical and thinks things through and wants a process. And I'm more fly by my seat in my pants and let's just sort of wing it and it'll work out. And I'm very spontaneous. He doesn't like spontaneity at all. He likes to be on time, which is 10 minutes early. I like to be 10 minutes late and I feel like I'm on time.
Yeah.
Everything about us is opposite. Like everything. The colors, I'm yellow, red. He's blue, green. Those are opposites. He's tends to be on the negative side. I tend to be on the positive side.
Yes.
What are some other opposites of your dad and I?
He likes super spicy food. You don't like super spicy food. It's just, I think sometimes too, because Brian and I are opposites, I'm like, no, this is not true. But sometimes I'm like, did I make the wrong choice? Is this, we're so opposites. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
But it's good to hear from other people, you don't have to be exactly the same to have a strong and healthy marriage.
Yeah.
So
that's sort of what the 2 principles that we're going to talk about today sort of all help you build towards, even if you are opposites, which most couples are.
Yeah.
Because opposites attract. But work towards your differences. But even if you're not opposite, even if you're the same as your husband, you still think your idea is the best and he still thinks his idea is the best.
Because we're human.
Yeah. So that's part of marriage is you have to sort of submit to each other, compromise with each other, love each other, give each other the benefit of the doubt. All these things go into making a happy marriage.
Yeah. Well, before you go into the 2 principles that you said you're going to talk to us about, which I'm excited to hear about, how do you think a strong marriage impacts the kids? And what reasons as a mom should we be focused on keeping our marriage strong?
Well, I think a strong marriage impacts your children in a lot of ways. But the main way, I think, is it brings security to the children that the parents love each other and they are going to stay together. Because I know that in y'all's world, even though our marriage was strong, y'all got to a certain age and some of your friends their parents started getting a divorce. There was turmoil in the house and that bothered y'all. I remember one time you came to me and you said, "Are you and Daddy going to get a divorce?" And I was like, "No, why do you say that?" And you said, "Well, because my friends, their parents are going to get a divorce." And I always thought they loved each other. And so that brings security to a child that if mom and dad are okay, then everything is okay, kind of thing. And if mom and dad love each other, then that makes your child feel loved even more, if that makes sense. So the other thing, why do I think it's important to build a strong marriage is for you and your spouse. One day, those kids are going to grow up. That's a good thing. You want them to grow up. You don't want them to stay in your house when you're 40 years old living in your basement. No. That's not a cool situation. So when they grow up and they get their own lives, and they will, and that's also a good thing, you need to still be in love with your spouse and still, want to hang out with them and all that, We just recently went and saw Taylor and Sarah in Florida for the new baby. And, they're new parents and they're figuring it all out. And every night they would go up at 8:00 to go get Addie ready for bed and all. And, it was okay. It didn't bother me. Yeah. Because I was like, so what? Good night. Y'all have a great night. Greg and I are going to watch our show because I really enjoy your dad. Yeah. Now, if I didn't have a good relationship with your dad, I could have gotten my panties in a wad and why are y'all leaving me? I'm by myself down here, even though your dad's here. Like he's reading his book or whatever. He's not paying attention to me. But that's not the case. We were sat on the sofa together. We had a great time. So it's like, that way it gives you the freedom to let your adult children go do whatever it is they want to do. And it doesn't bother you. You're like, okay, that's fine. I got my person here too. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
that's great. All right. Well, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And then let's get into these 2 principles.
The questions. Okay.
Okay. So what's the first principle we have to All right, Mom, what is the first principle that we need to embrace if we want to maintain a strong marriage?
Principle number 1 is to be united. We need to be united with our spouse on really every single level. We need to work as a team, and we also need to use our natural gifts to complement each other. Like I said, Greg and I are opposites, but whenever we combine our natural giftings, we become a whole unit, By myself, I'm only half as good, and by himself, he's half as good. But you put the 2 halves together, and it's a whole.
Excellent.
It's excellent. And your dad loves that word, excellent. So you're stronger when you're together. United, you stand. Divided, you fall.
Boom.
Boom.
So what are that's great. Be united. Love that. But,
Pretty broad.
Pretty broad. So let's get into the nitty gritty, the practical ways of how to be united with your husband.
I think active listening is a huge thing. We taught this in our 2-to-1 mentoring at the church. But active listening is, okay, so here's how it usually plays out in a couple's relationship. You get into an argument and he's telling you something, and the whole time you're not really listening because in the back of your mind, you're formulating your argument. So you're not really listening. So active listening is listening to your spouse, not formulating a thought, but you're formulating like, okay, I'm going to tell him what I hear you saying is, that's where your focus is. What I hear you saying is, and then we would teach that to our engaged couples. Like we would give them scenarios, and then they'd have to make 3 wishes. Sometimes engaged couples, like 3 wishes that they wanted their future partner to change. And so they'd be like, I don't know. I love everything about him. And I'm like, well, just dig deep. You can do it. You can find something that just sort of bugs you. And so they would be like, okay, and then they'd start. So then we'd say, okay, say what you want to say. And then I want the partner, the spouse, to be like, this is what I hear you saying, and try to get to the core level. So if your dad comes to me and he says, Karen, let me think of a problem. There's so many I could focus on. Let's see. Karen, it bugs me how whenever I come home from the trips, my desk is not the way I left it. So I would sit there and I'd listen to Greg and I'd say, okay, what I hear you saying is you don't like it whenever you leave your desk a certain way before a trip. And then when you come home and things are missing, things are not in order, you can tell people have been sitting at your desk. But not only that, they have messed up your desk, messed up your work environment. And that makes you feel frustrated at all of us. And he's like, yes, that's what I'm saying. And I say, okay. And then you just go on until that the other, and sometimes you say it and they're like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, tell it to me again. So this active listening, you're not defending yourself. You're just saying, this is what I hear you saying. Whether I agree with it or not, this is what I think you're saying. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's one.
I love that you use the desk reference because it's so true.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah.
Okay. Active listening.
Seek to understand. Like whenever you get into an argument with your spouse, you're just like, help me understand why you are so upset about the situation. Like there's a lot of emotion here. And I don't feel like it merits that much emotion. So help me understand what it is that I just did that irritates you so bad right now. Like, why are you really upset? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So seek to understand your spouse. Another thing is to ask the hard questions. And this is easier for some, it's easier for me, and it's harder for others. It's hard for your dad because your dad doesn't like to dig down too deep, but he's been married to me for 37 years. So I've had to like, hey, boy, you're going to have to dig down because I got to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So, but it is hard for some people. So give them space and time to learn it. And then just to spend
I'm going to pause right there. Mm-hmm. When you say ask the hard questions, what do you mean by hard questions?
Oh, well, I guess like that I just said, like, what is it that's really bugging you here?
Okay.
Or other hard questions would be, why does it upset you that I just did this or that I did that?
So not just saying, okay, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Mm-hmm. You have to dig, figure out why.
You're trying to understand where your spouse is coming from.
Hey friends, it's Katie. A quick break from the show to let you know that Karen's newly re-released book, Survival Guide to Motherhood, is now available for pre-order in the Birds on a Wire shop. This all-new edition of the Survival Guide to Motherhood is, in Karen's own words, everything she's been teaching for the past decade summed up in one place. You're going to want to have this book in your personal library, I promise. Whether you're a new mom or a seasoned mom, Survival Guide is full of practical wisdom that will recenter your focus and remind you what truly matters when it comes to raising your child. In the book, Karen covers the personality colors, discipline, marriage, home management, time management, resting in Christ, and even more. If you've been wishing there was a roadmap for motherhood, this is your book. Head to birdsonawire.com/survival-guide, or just click the link in our show notes today to pre-order and have the book shipped to you the day it releases on July 31st. I can't think of a better investment in yourself or of a better gift to give to a friend in this season of life. Again, head to birdsonawire.com/survival-guide, or just click the link in our show notes to get your book pre-ordered today. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
So we have to be active listening, not be on the defense. We have to seek to understand. We have to figure out why it's making them upset. And then you have to ask the hard questions. So for me, it's helpful to hear an example. So do you have an example where you or dad did all of those 3 things? You asked the hard questions, you seek to understand, there was active listening, and there was a better result.
Sure. Okay, so like, your dad is a perfectionist.
Yes.
And he travels a lot. And I implemented that 24-hour rule so that whenever he comes into travel, he can't criticize or help me in any way for 24 hours because it was frustrating to me. But whenever we were working out that whole scenario, like asking the hard questions, your dad would be like, I'm not getting after you. Why do you always think that I am getting after you whenever I suggest certain things? And I said, because you've been gone for 2 weeks. I've been holding down this fort for 2 weeks. And instead of you coming in and saying, I really appreciate you holding down the fort. You had a lot on you. The plumbing, messed up. The dog bit one of our kids. You had a lot going on with your work. You had a lot going on with school, whatever. Instead of giving me those kinds of praise, which I need.
Yes.
You focus on that I didn't pull in the garage the exact right way. I either pulled in too far or didn't pull in far enough. And I said, it has to be exactly the way you would have done it. And I said, that is very frustrating to me, that that's the thing you focus on whenever you come in the house. So what I hear is I'm not doing it right. You're being critical of me, which really ticks me off because I've just held down this fort for 2 weeks while you've been gone. Now, I know you've been working, but you've still been gone. So you're going to really fuss at me about where I'm parked in the garage? That's annoying. And so he was like, okay, well, just so you know, I didn't mean to be critical. And I said, I know you don't. You're just being your normal blue self. But after 2 weeks of being gone, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
I need you to find a smidgen of yellow in you.
Just let it go.
Muster it up.
Yes.
Does that help?
That does help. I think that helps because it's not just, I'm mad at you. Well, I'm sorry. And then moving away.
Right.
Like, and I think it's good for me and the other moms to see how it actually plays out.
Right.
So that's good. And, you spoke your piece and there's the boundary of I need 24 hours. But then you allowed dad to come in back saying like, I know that hurts your feelings. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. But sometimes just saying, well, I'm sorry that makes you feel that way, sometimes just feels like a condescending answer.
Right.
And then he was like, he acknowledged, I did tell you that. And, then you're like, so if we do this, then it'll help it. So it feels like there's a step forward to it being.
Well, and I think it's a process too.
Yeah, it's not like it's one time and done.
No, we all have to let our barriers down, and we're all defensive. Everybody is defensive. So we all have to be like, okay, I want to be united in this, but in order for me to get united and to be acting as one unit, I really have to understand where you're coming from because I don't think the way you think.
Right.
So help me understand.
And in order to do that, your last point of this is you have to spend time with one another.
You got to spend time with one another. Spend the time. It's not just spend time with one another. Spend the time on the hard issues. See, we hit a hard issue and hard, H-A-R-D, not heart, hard issue. And like you said, we have one conversation, oh, I'm sorry, and then they move on. But a lot of the times, it's not dealt with. So your dad will be like, why are we talking about this again? I said, because it's not 100% done. And maybe I'm a bulldog in that area. I do sort of stay on top of it because I want to end well together. Like, me, I'm always thinking of the future.
It's amazing. I don't know how you do it, but yeah.
I am. I'm always thinking of the future. And I'm like, I want to be in love with you when we are celebrating 50 years of marriage as much as I am right now. And honestly, the longer you're married, you have to just keep working at it. It doesn't just go away.
Yeah.
It doesn't just all of a sudden, oh, we're so close. No, it doesn't happen. You have to work. It's hard work.
All right. So you say married couples need to decide together when it comes to kids, finances, goals, careers, pretty much everything. But what does it look like when they're in opposite camps on something? How have you and Dad navigated that in your marriage? And I would love to hear an example if you have one.
Oh, girl, yeah. And decide together. This is hard. Now, most things, even though your dad and I are opposite, most things we do line up on, like our values and our principles and things like that. When we first got married, we both wanted to go to church. That was not an issue. We both wanted to give our tithe to the church. That was not an issue. We both wanted to discipline our children. We agreed on all those things. But things like finances, we didn't always agree. I'm a spender. He's a saver.
Yeah.
And your dad always wants to save, no matter what. So one year for Christmas, to give you an example, your grandparents, your dad's parents, gave us some money. And it was a bigger amount of money than we normally got. So it's 4 hours from Statesboro to Atlanta. We talked about this for 4 hours in the car.
Wow.
On what we were going to do with this money. And
what did you want to spend it on?
There were some things around the house that I wanted to do. I don't remember exactly what they were now, but I'd been wanting to do them for a while. I don't know if it was paint. I don't know if it was a new piece of furniture. I don't know what it was, but I wanted to do things for a while, and we just never had the money, or we were saving or whatever. Your dad wanted to save 100%, and he wanted to do, I think, pay off the credit cards from Christmas, which I was in agreement with that. But then I wanted to put the rest on the house. So we could not come to an agreement. No matter, he would give his points, I would give my points. This is what I hear you saying, you're right. This is what I hear you saying, you're right. That's like, we totally understood what each other was saying, but we could not come to agreement. So the next morning, I go into the office, I'm at church, and the guy that ran like the benevolence area of the church, he was an older man in his 70s.
What's the benevolence?
Benevolence is like giving money.
Okay.
Like when people need money and they go to the church to get help. So anyways, I went into Bob's office, and he was an older man, like in his 70s. And he was on my team. So I knew him very well. And he said, how was your Christmas? And we started chit-chatting and everything. And I said, Bob, I got a problem. Like Greg and I were given this money. I told him how much it was. And I said, Greg wants to save it all. And I want to buy some things for the house. And Bob just sort of sat there real quiet like, and he just said, well, why don't you? Now, mind you, we'd spent 4 hours in the car talking through this. And Bob says, why don't you save half of it and the other half put towards the house? It was very simple. It was so simple. And I just looked at him and I went, oh, that's brilliant.
Didn't think about that.
And he just looked at me like, okay. But it took an outsider's perspective because all I could think of the entire 4 hours in the car is, you are not going to win on this.
Yeah.
I am not going to let you save all that money. And same thing with me. You're not going to win on this. We are not going to spend all this money. We are going to be good stewards of our money, and we're going to save, and we're going to, but Bob just real easy, just save half and spend half. And I was like, so I went home and I told your dad, and he's like, that's a great idea. And so that's what we did. And why could we not come up to that decision on our own? Because we were letting our own selves get in the way of it, if that makes any sense.
That's so funny.
So my thing is, when you get to a thing where you cannot decide together, bring in an outsider. Somebody that does not have a dog in the hunt.
Okay.
Somebody that does no skin in the game, and they can be unbiased and just give you some wise counsel.
That's smart.
Yeah.
I want to be using that. All right. First principle is be united.
Yeah.
We've unpacked it. Good examples. We know active listening, seek understanding, ask the hard questions, spend the time. But then the second one is the principle number 2, and is be for one another.
Be for one another.
And let's unpack that, Mom.
All right.
Tell us what that means.
So the first part of being for one another, and this is going to sound very simple, but it's just to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching an old movie. I love old movies. You know that. And just the way the wife was talking to the husband, just this, and I know it's a script. I know it's not real life, but just how kind she was to him. And it really was convicting to me. And I was just like, whenever I speak to Greg, am I kind? Mm-hmm. Or, especially when y'all were young, did I just sort of make him my fifth child and bark orders at him when he'd come in the door? And I can remember vividly when he was in the Navy and doing Top Gun and all that fun stuff, And I would tell him, check your ego at the door. It's diaper changing time. Like, there's no Top Gun in this house.
Let's go.
Like, let's go. It's poopy time,
It's poopy time.
It's poopy time. We got to change these diapers, because I wanted some help. And of course, he was sweet and he always did it. And it was sort of the joke in the family. But be kind in our words to him, to each other. Because sometimes we just talk to him like we're talking to the kids.
You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of the You've Got Mail scene when Meg Ryan is sick and Tom Hanks brings her soup. And she's like, meh, 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 meh. And then the more sweet Tom Hanks is to Meg Ryan, the softer she gets. And he's like, do you need a tissue? And it's just it's one of my favorite scenes ever.
Exactly.
I love that
and at
movie.
the end, he puts his fingers over her lips and he goes, I'm going to stop you before you say something you're going to regret.
I know.
And it's so true. Like, we just need somebody to stop us before we say something that we're going to regret. And I pray, I do. I pray about this. God, help me.
Be kind.
Be kind.
I mean, it is so simple, but sometimes it's like the money issue. It's so simple. It's so easy. You know what I mean? Splitting the money down in half, be kind to one another. But you do have to be like, God, I need you to fill this in for me. I need you to love him through me. You know what I mean? Because I'm so angry right now. I can't do it.
Well, it's even the little things. Listen, y'all, on the podcast one time, I don't even remember. I think I told, Sonny was the host at the time. And I said, sometimes our husbands just get on our nerves. And when Greg eats soup, he just slurps it. And I forgot your dad listens to the podcast. And so the next time we had soup, y'all, he got up and he went and turned on the music. And I said, why are you turning on the music? And he goes, so you don't have to listen to me slurp. Oh, I felt so terrible. I was just like, oh, that was terrible. I shouldn't have said that. It's just not, you don't even have to be angry is my point.
Yes.
They just get on your nerves. Something they do. You know what I mean? You love them, but
just be kind.
Just be kind.
I love it.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. How many times do we jump to the wrong conclusion and we don't give our spouse the benefit of the doubt?
I think it goes back to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Like, you would want him to give you the benefit of the doubt.
That's exactly
so give
right.
him the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the last one under that is to believe the best in the other person. And that's also hard. Sometimes, especially us sweet mamas, we are at the house all day, or we're working and then we go home and we've got the kids, we got all the responsibility, we got all the things. And then our husband will call, they're out of town and they're doing something fun. And they say, well, I miss you. And we say, oh yeah, I bet you do, or something snarky like that. And we're not believing the best in them. They probably do miss us. Mm-hmm. And I've always been envious of that with your dad, that he got to go away, go to a great hotel, fly and do all the things. But since I've been traveling with birds over the years, it's not as glamorous as it looks.
Yeah.
Because whenever you go back to your hotel, you are by yourself,
It's lonely.
And 2 weeks at a time, it gets to be real lonely. They do miss being home. They do miss having the meals at the house. Or I tell Dad what we're having for dinner when y'all were little, and he'd be like, oh, that sounds so good. I wish I were there. But in my mind, I'm like, well, I wish I was in Paris.
Yeah.
Why would you want to eat this meal
when you could have a croissant?
When you're in Paris and you can walk the streets and you don't have kids tugging on you all day saying, mommy, 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 500 times. Mm-hmm. So, but we need to believe the best in them.
Yeah. I think that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that in my fridge. A sticky note. Believe the best.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Another principle underneath this being for your spouse is to be their number one cheerleader. We heard years ago, I don't even know who said it at this time. I don't know if it was John Woodall or I don't know if it was Andy Stanley. I honestly don't know. I'll give whoever credit, but I don't know who it was.
Okay.
But it was just like, be your spouse's number one cheerleader, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Listen, I think about that all the time because Brian does travel.
Yeah.
And you said that one time, and you said, if you don't want to hear about his day, and if you're going to be snarky and, oh, where did you go to dinner, then somebody else is going to be excited. So I'm like, I want to see the pictures. I want to see where you went. I want to know about your trip because I love that you love your job, and I want to be the person that you tell about it. I don't want anybody else to and not a weird, but I want you to tell me about your job, and I want you to know that I'm excited and I'm cheering for Brian.
Yep.
That is stuck with me for a long time.
Good. That's good.
Yeah.
Keep the romance. And that can be hard too, depending on what age or season your kids are in, because it's hard, We get into our daily routines. You've been married 10 years, It's hard to keep the romance, but we need to keep it up and don't let that slack. And then be their biggest fan, which is sort of like being their cheerleader. And I do love that. And I do think that your dad does that well. Like, I do love that he listens to all the podcasts.
He's really sweet.
He is. Because he has all of his podcasts that he's listens to, but mine is one of them. So that's nice. I don't like it, though, when he comes back and he says, when you said this, I would have said, and I said, well, it doesn't matter now. It's already recorded. It's already done. But thank you for your tip. But be their biggest fan. And he is really good about that, I got to say.
So
does that help? Those two principles?
Those are great.
So be united and be for each other. And then all those little things underneath.
So great.
Surely. Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, you gave a lot of good advice. I'm not saying you're missing anything. I just didn't know if anything was like, oh, this is something else.
I don't know. I just think the longer I'm married, the more and more I realize that it never ends. And that's a good thing. So I have to keep reinventing ways to just continually fall in love with Greg. And I want to continually to fall in love with him because I don't want to be in my 70s and just be like, ugh. I want to be that old couple at the park that you see sitting there holding hand in hand. And, they just love each other. They love being around each other. They have a good time. And I don't want to be that old, bitter couple that's just like, that's no fun. So,
all right.
Keep working at it.
Keep working at it. Well, mamas, thank you so much for listening. We are just so thankful for our audience, for Birds on a Wire, and for Wire Talk, because this podcast is for you. So thank you so much for sending in your questions and always being active listeners. So if you think about it, we would love for you to leave a comment or a review, because so more people can listen to Wire Talk. But that's all we have for today. So don't forget to stay united and be one for one another. And it's a good recipe for a great mess. It's a good recipe for a great marriage. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.